how many podcasts can you be on? How many networking meetings? How many relationships can you build and manage? All of those activities create opportunity, and it's just a matter of keeping it going.
If you are dealing with different people online, offline, you have to network. And here is Josh just sharing with you the perfect example. Hello to everyone, Anatoliy is here, and today is the new episode in our Ecom Business Podcast, and we have a wonderful guest who's going to be sharing today with us about how important to build a demand around the company and what is going to be exactly helping you on this way to generate more sales and making bigger name on the market. So basically we have today as a guest a wonderful person who is a seasoned entrepreneur, and his relentless skills and drive has given him the platform to build the sales ideas and even bigger companies, which he is able to build. And one of the biggest success stories on his end, it was the Atcore Systems, which he was selling on back in 2016. It has been acquired by one of the leading CRM partners in the industry, and I would love to listen about that a bit more today. And as well, he has been founded the FounderScale, which is allowed to help different companies to improve their sales and improve their value of the company in general. So our guest name today is Josh Sweeney. Josh, what's up? How are you doing today?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for finding time, and I believe it's going to be a wonderful conversation, especially about the specific subject which I was just mentioning. First of all, I really would love to hear your story about the successful acquiring company in 2016 by one of really leaders in the CRM industry. And as well, I really want to know more about you. I mean, about how you build such kind of company, and when have you started, what has been the reason, and so on, how many years you are in the market. Let's share with the audience so they will be engaged a bit more with your story.
Yeah, sure. So the one you're referring to, Atcore Systems, I grew over, I guess, about 8 or 9 years, and it was a CRM consulting firm, and it was actually my first multi-million-dollar company. So I had some small businesses before. I think I'd had maybe 1 or 2 go to maybe 6 figures, and so that was the first multi-million-dollar 7-figure business. And it was an amazing ride, a lot of lessons learned, and I had to become an expert in way more than I ever thought when I got into entrepreneurship. Sometimes you think you can be that expert and really grow the company, but then you got to be an expert at HR and sales and marketing and, operations and everything else that comes along with it. So it was definitely a fun ride.
That's cool. And you were growing that for 8-9 years. Like when you said that my company is now 3 years old, and we are growing while we are learning and growing while we are going. And here is for 8-9 years, I believe it was something pretty similar. And what was the really make the big difference for your company during this period of time that it allows you to generate the strategy and the system in the company that bring the high evaluation cost that you were able to sell the company? What was the main difference during this journey of 9 years which allows you to do that?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 things that really happened that I reflect on, in looking back. I mean, one, I joined this organization called EO, the Entrepreneur Organization. And that put me in the room with other entrepreneurs of $1 million plus businesses that were also growing. And so every month I was able to share my challenges and they're sharing challenges and, different feedback around that. So just being around other high performing entrepreneurs, I think was a big, big part of that, because when everybody around you is growing, you want to be involved in that as well, right? There's a lot of motivation behind it. So I think being part of that organization was a big piece. The other piece that I've realized, at least that I've enjoyed, is what I call brand piggybacking. So that's aligning yourself with another larger brand and being able to work with them to grow your business. So, I mean, common phrases for this are like partnerships and channel partners and things like that. But, brand piggybacking to me is a much tighter alignment where you can work together. So we were a reseller of a certain platform, and that helped us a tremendous amount because that company was much larger than our professional services firm. So just picking the right partner, to go to market with was a big part of the success as well.
Oh, that's how, I mean, it's basically, you see, I was speaking about systems in my mind, what was really the game changer and so on, which is, I'm just trying to say that it's become even more interesting because you're right. I mean, one of the things which is giving us evaluation is the people who we are standing with and who are helping us to achieve the results which we're looking for. So basically you found out the right partner who has the network of the right community, and it gives your company the louder name and definitely the higher evaluation at the end. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
Guys, like networking, that's the everything. I was saying that before, and even this kind of wonderful podcast which is we're having with the guests, like if you are dealing with different people online, offline, you have to network. And here is George just sharing with you the perfect example. There is no nothing is behind the scenes super like rocket science things. It's everything easy, just the right networking and continue doing what you're doing and doing that again. Boring stuff at the end, if you can listen, like on my end, what I'm saying to my guys, we have to do again and again what's working for us. Yeah, I said no, and they start giving some excuses, you know. They start giving some excuses that let's do this, let's do that. I said no, boring stuff, which will allow us to be consistent and grow. So let's just repeating the same on the bigger speed, and it's actually the reason for the growth. And it's what is happening actually on your success story. You just got the right partnership and done exactly what was working for you again and again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we say activity equals opportunity, you know, and so if you're not getting enough activities, then it's just not going to happen, right? Like you said, you just got to keep doing it over and over. You know, it's like, for me, it's like, how many podcasts can you be on? How many networking meetings? How many relationships can you build and manage? You know, all of those activities create opportunity, and it's just a matter of keeping it going.
Exactly, I agree with you. So basically, when you sold that company back in 2016, what was the reason that you decided to open the next company, which is for FounderScale? What pushed you for that, and what are you doing exactly with your company now? What kind of service?
Yeah, so there was a challenge I had in my last company, Atcore Systems, you know, when I was growing it, and we grew to, let's say, about 1.25 million. And I started to hit some limits for myself, right? You start running out of time. You start, you know, having to really double down on education and personal growth to break through certain barriers. The challenges change. And so when we did that, one of the ideas we had was we were going to go out and pay vendors and start lead generation, right? Everybody says, well, you know, get more leads in. And we were a professional services firm. So in B2B professional services, you know, it's a little differently. It works differently than retail or e-commerce. And so in that space, you know, we spent a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars with different marketing firms in order to drive leads in. And we just found that none of them really worked well for our size company with our size budget in B2B. And so, you know, after spending just a ton of money on that, you know, we overcame it. We grew a few million more and were able to have an exit. But it was something that really stuck in the back of my mind was, is there a way we can go out and help other entrepreneurs and really differentiate and say, well, what works in our space? What works on the smaller end? You know, if you're a sub $3 million company, somebody may tell you something works, but they mostly, you know, an agency may tell you something works, but they work with mostly $50 and $100 million companies, and it doesn't translate. Mm-hmm. So when we thought about building FounderScale and before establishing FounderScale, that was really the intent, is how do we really truly understand the marketing ability based on budget and time of a small business owner and be able to drive them in the right direction on what they should be doing. And we believe that it's very different than what most agencies recommend and what most agencies do. And there's a lot of nuance when, you know, you're a $1 or $2 or $3 million owner of a company and you may not even have a marketing budget yet. There's a lot of conversations to be had there. So that was really the genesis of FounderScale, was a lot of challenges I went through, a lot of wasted money trying different things and realizing this is different for small businesses. That $2 to $20 million range, the dynamics are different. So how can we help them? And that's why we founded FounderScale.
Awesome. I have one question. As a person who already creating his second successful company, and just what was your feeling when you start the new startup? I mean, because you're already done, all the journey behind, you can breathe out, you can relax. But instead of that, you just start in another startup, which is definitely takes all your energy and time. And how was the feeling to start it over?
Yeah, so I created and bootstrapped my first company, and then we bootstrapped FounderScale. And I'll tell you, I completely forgot how much work went into the first 3 years of the first company. I mean, it was a tremendous amount of work, and it was many years ago. My family was younger. I was very motivated to get that going. And so I think the dynamics were a bit different this time when starting it. So I had a lot more knowledge. I had, more capital and some other things, but no matter what you have, I still think the first 3 years in a startup when you're bootstrapping are just heads down. It's a hard work, it's grind, it's getting it going and pushing through a lot of different challenges. So yeah, I would say that was the biggest surprise is I just forgot how much work it was to really get that momentum going from zero.
That's exactly what I was feeling because we definitely forget how is that at the beginning. And I love that you said about that you learn it, you use in the first company you have generated the skills. So the second company, it was easier to figure it out how to start, but still the hard work has to be done, correct? Doesn't matter you have skills or not, you're just doing that a different way, but still in the hard way.
Yeah, and I think sometimes maybe I thought it was going to be different, right? You have these skills, you've grown a multi-million-dollar company, this one's going to come a lot faster and easier. And I'm not saying it hasn't come faster and easier in some degree, but the amount of work still has to be put in to make that happen. The bar's still high. If you want to grow faster, there's still other lessons to learn, and there's other product market fit things to figure out. So there's lots of other challenges that still have to be determined. And it's just a ton of work and you got to get heads down and make it happen.
I agree with you. Can you tell me a bit more about your personal opinion on how you can scale the additional revenue with the demand generation? How to build the demand around the company and why it's important? Can you describe by your words? Because I know it's one of the main things which you are driving through in your current company.
Yeah, so what we see is there's a lot of people that get out there and think that they're going to pay $1, right? Especially in the early phase of the business, they're going to pay money and they're going to get $3 back, right? Those sales are just going to come in. They're just going to hit the easy button and do ads or do social or whatever it is, and it's just going to make that work. And we don't find that that's generally the case, especially the smaller the company and the lower the budgets are. So what we say is, lead generation is to convert and close. But before that, if you can't convert and close if you don't have an engaged audience already. So what comes first? What comes first is demand generation. And so demand generation is all about engaging and educating your audience. And I think it works different in different spaces. So when we talk about demand generation in that context, in B2B or professional services types of scenarios, you have to build demand, you have to get people engaged, then they'll probably schedule a meeting, then they'll fill in your form, right? You have to really entice them and build that relationship for those longer sales cycles. I think on the e-commerce and the retail side, what we see is more of the using demand generation for community building, right? So you can have your performance marketing side where you're running ads, you're building funnels, and you're trying to drive people through to get the dollar, right? And get them to convert. But if you look at major brands and brands that have really big followings or higher margin items, what they're doing is they're doing demand generation. They're really building that community. And so when we look at working with companies on that side, it's more of that community play. Like, what's the newsletter? Are there webinars? How are you really engaging to build that community of people that are creating a lot more demand in a different way and a lot more of a following? And so demand generation can be plugged in different ways. But again, for us, it comes back to engaging and educate. How do you engage and educate on a consistent basis to scale up the company?
Awesome. And this kind of domain, which is, I completely agree with you, it's like a personal brand building and build the trust before speaking to people. It will make easier for you to close the deal, just because usually what kind of objection is there? Like trust issue, first thing. Like first thing, they're not sure if you're real, what is the story behind. So they I need to think about it, like the general objection. And it's about the trust a lot of times, and build this kind of demand before the call. It's really important. In this case, my question to you, in your opinion, top 3 or 4 points which would help to build this demand generation, providing value, which way, how, some people out there just starting their companies, what would you suggest? What kind of way to build this kind of demand?
Yeah, so when we look at a demand generation program, we really look at niching down to build a community of very focused people in a certain area, right? So for example, I'll use kind of a B2B example. You may be in the services space and you provide multiple different services in multiple industries. When you build a community, you normally go build an industry, like a vertical focus group. And so building those programs, those demand generation programs, is all around picking a niche audience and really learning what their interests are, how you can align with those interests to provide value so that you're remembered. When they think of buying a product, they think of buying from you, or buying a service, they think of buying from you because you're the central hub of that community. So, the examples I use are, mini books, webinars, very educational webinars. There's kind of the sales webinar, and then there's educational webinars, and they're used in different ways to build a community. Any other, newsletters that aren't about you necessarily, but they're more about the community and the challenge and helping other people grow. And so when we look at those, it all comes back to, I think, the word community really, is what is that demand? How is demand generation building that community, and how would you want to be engaged? So that's another thing we think about is, if you go think about your favorite brands and organizations or trainers you've used, how did they go above and beyond to pull you into the community, and what did they do to build that community? And you'll see a lot of patterns, right? You'll see the webinars, you'll see the speaking events, maybe the workshops, and they build on that. Like you said, they build on the trust with those early items, and then maybe they'll upsell to another item, but they're still building that community all along the way.
Yeah, and actually, I understand what you mean about building the community. Before doing that, choose the right niche. Which niche you want to be kind of expert, which niche you want to get those people coming and listening from you, studying from you, being admired by you in that particular niche. And that's basically can be done in our days even by just using the social media. Am I right? Or there is some, in your opinion, extra steps, like a steroidic steps, which you can use to not just being active on social media, but something else what will help out to them to become loud on the market in the early days?
Yeah, I think, like you said, you do have to pick a niche, which is really difficult for some founders, right? If you're doing lots of different things and you're very horizontal, picking a niche can be difficult. I think there's also authenticity on having something to really stand for and stand on, right? So if you look at some of the top promoters out there, they have something that they stand for, something they believe in, and that's the majority of what they speak about. So you really have to find that speaking platform. As far as engagement, though, it's really interesting because a lot of businesses and small business founders that we talk to, and people in that kind of $2 to $20 million range, there's this perception that you can go just do social, right? Or you hire a PPC company, or you hire a SEO company and they go do this one thing, but that doesn't really cover the breadth of how people engage. So the best way I heard it put was, everybody engages on the platform that they like, right? So the person who listens to podcasts, listens to podcasts. The person who clicks an AdWords ad, clicks an AdWord ad, right? And downloads material. The person who reads a case study, reads a case study. The person who's on Instagram scrolls through Instagram, right? And what we're really saying with that is you can't just be on one, and it's hard to be on many, right? So that's the challenge on the smaller side of, as a business owner is you can't just be on one, but it's hard to manage multiple. So you really have to be strategic about where your audience is and go there. And you may be picking, 1 to 3 different platforms. And so I think that's a big part of kind of the question you had is like, can you do this one thing? Can you be on social? It's like, well, that's just one piece, but you're only getting the people who engage there. And the big question is that where your target audience engages, and there's, different challenges with that, but I think there's a lot of market research that gets done to say, well, is your audience there? Are they on Facebook groups? Are they on TikTok? Do they click ads? What type of material do they engage in, or what type of groups do they engage in?
I got you. What do you think for e-commerce direction? For niche in e-commerce, let's say it's like a small brand which is trying, like actually dropshipping store which is trying to become a brand, so they already white label their products, building the outstanding the customer's care. So moving on into the branding, having already like 7-figure revenue in a year, and just looking forward to become more branded style than just a dropshipping style. So they start being active on the social medias. They already have not a community, they have a list of people who can become their community by inviting them there. So it's already first steps can be done. Would it be helpful for them to be active on the podcast as a guest, or starting their own podcast, or some other directions which they can go and build additional demand and bring more people to their internal community?
Yeah, I think that's a big opportunity, right? There's already communities out there, and normally the more niche the community, the tighter it is. And probably the more opportunity for better margin as well, right? So if you're on social media and you're doing what most other people are doing, and competing from a drop shipping perspective, there's not as much differentiation. So as you start to use that capital from building that company to move more into something branded, now you start to build a following. So there's lots of companies that have done that, where they did the drop shipping, they parlayed that money and that capital into a brand, and then they picked a niche, and then they go into that niche. So whether it's, let's say it's supplements, right? They go into the female niche of a certain age or certain type of people that are doing certain types of fitness, right? All of a sudden, now you know exactly where you need to go market it, because your branding went this way. And now you know the gyms that support that, you know the communities that support it, and it's not as generalized. And we also see, again, the margin can go up because it speaks directly to a person that identifies with your brand. So there's lots of ways to, I think, get that money flowing in. And that's one challenge we have as founders, right? Is we got to get the money flowing in first, and that starts to pay for some of these moves that we want to make. And we just have to be really diligent about doing that. But I think again, once you do that, you can go find the community, and then you can build a really good following. And I've seen it done all kinds of different cool ways with, with Facebook groups, with LinkedIn groups, or with retail stores that identify and cater to a very specific target market. There's all kinds of ways to go piggyback on somebody else and bring your product to them.
Got it. Yeah, I completely understand, and that is 100% makes sense. I agree with you. And I believe people who trying to build a brand, they usually they have these kind of limitations in their brain. Especially in my case, it's like ex-drop shippers, and most of the time and people has like limitations. Yeah, it's a strategy for the ads. Like I will just like I have Facebook, Google, I will add TikTok, I will become a brand. Or I have Facebook, TikTok, I will add Google, I will become a brand. I will be like more clickable in the Google. But definitely when you are going to build the demand about your brand, nothing can be purchased by the paid ads. You can generate some attention, but to keep that attention, you must really do the work to build this kind of demand about you. And this is exactly how you describe in that.
Yeah, and that's a fundamentally different challenge, right? I mean, to go out and do ads and make sure the conversion ratios are right, so somebody puts in a credit card, is a whole different challenge than building a brand and a following. And when you look at the bigger money, the bigger valuations, the bigger margins, that's where they come from, is something that's very branded, that has the following, and can charge those rates. And I think that solves a number of other challenges too. Like we've had people that said, well, Josh, we can't spend that kind of money on marketing. Our margins aren't high enough. I'm like, okay, well, why are your margins not high enough? Well, this looks a lot like, all the other things that are being, sold. So how do we differentiate? Mm-hmm. And that's where the money comes in.
According to demand around the brand and according to everything what we discussed, what's your opinion about the most common mistakes for the lead generations when people start in just the lead gen, as you mentioned, from day one, just to spend $1 and get to $3? Still it's working, but I mean, there is so much harder and common mistakes are there. What's in your opinion, those kind of common problems that they are failing on the lead gen?
Yeah, as far as lead gen, I think it's thinking that there is an easy button, right? Because what happens is we look out and we go, okay, all of these other companies are doing this, right? There's ads in my face all day. So I must be able to just go create an ad and people are going to click it and I'm going to close deals and get sales. And I think, it's really difficult, because if anything is that easy, right? If somebody can go sign up and put ads out in less than 10 minutes, right? Which you can sign up for any ad platform in probably less than 10 minutes, then there's a lot of other people doing it, right? There's a lot of other people driving up the cost. There's a lot to learn. So I think just thinking that there's an easy button. And then I think that's also even more exacerbated, that's kind of the e-commerce, the retail, just learning that and doubling down and putting in the time. And then the speed at which it happens is many times slower than what most people think, right? That learning curve and figuring out the product market fit and what to say. I think it's even longer and harder on the B2B side. So B2B is a fundamentally different beast when it comes to that, because you have to engage more. They're buying from people they know, like, and trust, and you have to have time to build that trust. So yeah, there's different timelines, and I think that's just a big mistake, is maybe risking a lot of money before doing enough testing can be very painful.
Got it. Tell me, are you using for your company the lead gen paid advertising, or everything is going on the word of mouth, which is referrals? How is your company was able to grow in the first couple of years to multiple 7 figures? I mean, about the second company.
So what we see is interesting, on the B2B services side that I'm in, is most founders build the company through referrals and networking. And then one day there's a bottleneck, right? They don't have any more time, and they look out and they go, okay, I'm going to jump way over here and I'm going to build a sales and marketing team, right? I'm going to hire salespeople. A lot of them never hired salespeople. I'm going to hire marketing people. A lot of founders never hired, marketing people or managed a marketing team. We're going to do ads, right? There's all these things that they do, and they're making this huge leap. I built it to a few million on networking, and now I'm going to jump way over here. And what we find is it's actually better to make it more of a sliding scale, where you start to ramp up your relationships and find ways to amplify the relationship building, and then start to use the capital to build the marketing. So it's a transition more than a big leaping across this chasm. Now you can leap that chasm. My estimate is that's about a $500,000 leap. to do correctly, and there's still going to be a lot of lessons learned. So in our space, I'm a bigger believer in going in and building that community, doing demand generation, which amplifies the referrals and the networking and amplifies your time. And you can bring more people into that process to go build relationships and start to fund the more scalable side over time. And that's, depending on the size of the company, the capital, that can be a 1 to 3 year journey to make that full transition.
And it's really what is the showing up that it is a real brand, because if you turn off the ads, you could be nowhere. But if you turn off the ads and you build the community manually before through the referrals, you're going to be still actively brand which people admire and know. And that's what's really make the difference between just a lead gen company which is getting deals fast and cash only today, and people who are really building the demand about their businesses. Like 100% logic in your words, like I agree with them, because I'm in this kind of position where I understanding like we have to be more louder, more organic company than just advertising, because I've been in the dropshipping space on the like multiple 6 and 7 figure spaces with the stores, or I mean on my own, not just in the agency. And one night like ads has been shut down for no reason, and you know what, we had no sales. I mean, here and there a couple of sales, but from 12K a day, we become 700 a day. And it was insanely lesson for me that, that it means like without the ads, you're nobody. And this is where you have like, if you have an e-commerce business guys who is listening to us, or like, then doesn't matter e-commerce or not e-commerce. If you rely only on the advertising part, if internet will be shut down in one day, you're going to be on the street. You have to think about how to bring the brand around you or your company. It depends how you want to see yourself in the company, upfront or backend. I love it. That's important.
That's a great point, right? If you only sell through ads and there's even a glitch that day, right, you have zero sales. But if you think of the biggest brands that have the most brand equity, like an Apple, if they stopped advertising today, they would still have plenty of sales in that day. And so I think, that's part of the learnings and the lessons learned as an entrepreneur is, if you can get it going on the ads, great. But you want to start that transition, right? You want to start to take some of the money, whether it's a percentage, consistently, or like we like to take a gross percentage and put it in a separate account and say, this is to fund this transition. And as we do more over here, we can fund this transition over to a brand that's on multiple channels, to where when one system doesn't work anymore, we're still good. And I mean, you hear these stories all the time, right? Like Google makes a change to AdWords, Facebook makes a change to how they do something. You used to be able to have a conversion and sell something at a certain point, and all of a sudden the numbers don't work anymore because the cost of the ad went up. So there's just all kinds of dynamics constantly at play from a marketing perspective. And but the more you move towards that brand recognition and owning your own platforms and owning your own production, the more I think the more resiliency you have.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what helping to be consistent in what you're doing. And I actually now even more wondering, because I have one more question which I want to ask you. And I'm always asking this kind of question all my guests at the end of the podcast, and I'm wondering to listen your answer. You understand why? I mean, there is simple question, but in your end, it will be interesting to listen. I will explain later on.
Okay.
What would you choose? The journey or end result?
Oh. That's a tough one. I think for me, it's the journey. It really is the journey. I think in my first business, I was really targeted on the end result and, getting there. And then now it's about the journey, because I want to build something much bigger. So I went to a few million. I had an exit. I had that win where it was about that result. And I think in this one, I'm looking for much bigger numbers and much faster growth and more scalability. And when I look at it, it's more about the journey than anything, because of the personal growth I get to experience during that. And maybe even reflecting before, it might have actually been about the journey. I just didn't know that. I wasn't as self-aware at that time. But I think the journey is the most fun because you just get to learn and grow and meet so many people along the way. So the journey.
I'm actually happy to hear like you were stuck, and I understood why. And this is exactly was the reason why I was so wondering to listen, because you sold already the company, which is you already like achieved the result which you are most probably focusing on. And now what's your opinion about that journey or result? Because you have new goals, obviously. And I love to hear that, because like you see, you were focusing on the results at the beginning. Now you achieved it and you understood that there is no end of movie. There is no titles at the end that like story is ended. The life is continuous. I love it. Yeah, that's actually one of the wondering parts for me, because I wasn't asking that anyone before who was creating a couple of companies and exit from the first, because that's exactly what makes you different in terms of what would be the answer. And great answer, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
Josh.
you.
So I really excited to finally post this podcast and see what's going to be audience will saying, and if they would have any kind of questions. If you don't mind, I will just place your social media links to our bio of the podcast, so the people out there would be able to reach out to you and ask maybe about the consulting, or maybe something about your services, how you can help them build the demand about their brands. And if you don't mind, that's going to be shared with the audience after the podcast will be launched. And really appreciate for sharing your story, sharing your skills and knowledge about particularly what's important to be organically well done business, which could be evaluated much higher than you just like rely on something on one place only. That's powerful points and the golden nuggets, which is guys will be taking out, that community is everything. That's true. Community, without community, we are not worth anything at all. Coca-Cola won't be there if they won't be build a reliable brand, and we won't be their community. All the people around the world is community for Coca-Cola. So it's really all about the demand of the brand. Thank you, Josh, for being with us. Thank you for your time. And if you have anything to say to the audience, please be open.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I look forward to hearing, any comments on the show, or reach out with questions, and all the links will be at the bottom. So click those links and feel free to ask anything else extra that I can help with.
Thank you, Josh. So guys, Josh Sweeney was with us. Have a wonderful time and speak to you in another episode. See you.